everyone, and welcome to another live stream where we are talking all about the 6 types of working genius. My name is Julie Griffin, and I'm a certified facilitator for the 6 types of working genius, and I work at Meridian Technology Center in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And today I am joined by 3 of my fellow facilitators. You may recognize 2 of them from the live stream we did last month. And we have a newbie joining us for the first time today. So I would welcome you guys out to join me. And those of you who are watching, please say hello and let us know you are here. So there's Jay, we got Denise, and Kyle. Welcome back, my friends.
Hey.
Thank you.
Hello. Good to be here.
So all of you guys, we are spread out all over the country, and we have linked all sorts of profiles to this. So if you guys are here watching, which the eyeballs tell us that we have people watching, please drop a comment so that we know that you're here. Say hi to a specific friend if you want to say hi to a specific friend. And of course, if you have questions, please drop them in the comments, because how many other opportunities are you going to have to ask 4 facilitators 1 question? So with that, yeah, I also want to shout out our producer in the background. We've got Chris Hennessy with Hip Productions driving the bus today and popping up all the comments so that we can focus on the conversation. So thank you, Chris, for being our producer today. With that, I already said who I am and where I'm from. I just want to go around and give everybody else a real quick chance to say who you are, where you're from, and what you do. So that way everybody who's watching has a better idea of who we are. So Jay, I'll start with you.
Yeah, my name is Jay Scott. I live in Fresno, California. It's right. So if you fold California in half, Fresno's right about the middle of it. To give you an idea. And I founded 10X Solutions and working on creating augmented solutions for business, AI augmented solutions.
Awesome. Very good. Kyle, you're next.
I am from, is this backwards? I'm from Michigan, kind of down in this area here. Oh, wait, it'll be like this. Kalamazoo, Michigan, facilitator for about half a year now, but out on my own doing consulting and working with small businesses and working on that team cohesion and camaraderie and how can we be more productive together. And I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Awesome. Very good. And Denise, you're our newbie for today. So tell us about you.
Excited to be here. And I am in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I am with a boutique business development group called Impact 3. And we are here to be the trusted advisor for our businesses to help them have more impact and continue to be efficient in all that they do.
Very good. So I am so excited to be here with you guys. I think it's awesome that we have, diverse backgrounds and are serving kind of unique niches of who we're serving using Working Genius. And I think that's a really great opportunity, not only for us to learn from each other, but for those people who are joining us and watching to get those different perspectives as well. So I know last time we talked about really what is Working Genius. And we started off, actually, we didn't start off because I forgot, but we started off with an overview of the 6 types of Working Genius. So before we dig into our topic for the day, we're going to do that again, but we're going to let Kyle give the overview real quick this time. So go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, this was exciting to me because it was the first time I could go to my wife and say, look, this says I'm a genius, at least out of 2 of these categories. Right. So there's 6 total. And these are determined as really God-given gifts. Like I can think back to high school and be like, oh, that makes sense. I've had this for a long time. This is where I've been. And so out of the 6 gifts, they spell widget, which was by happenstance with Pat Lencioni as they were designing it. But the first one's wonder. So we're talking somebody that loves to ponder about the greater possibility of something, that why do we do things the way we do them? And how can we do them better? Can we make them better? And people love and derive energy from this. Then the next one that coincides in that is invention. And so it's somebody that has solutions, somebody that likes to design something. If you like whiteboards, that's probably one of your gifts right there is invention. And then they hand it off. And I say hand it off because this is a productivity tool. The next one's discernment. So this person I described as like a forecaster. So you give them this invention, and then they predict what could happen, which ways it could go, and then it goes back to the inventor, and they wrestle with it and they make it better. So discernment's a huge portion of this productivity tool. And then it goes to the next one, which is the galvanizer. And so if you think of a lot of coaches or somebody that gets a really big motivational rah-rah type of speech, and they're not just a cheerleader, but they're speaking belief into you, and they can be a little bit pushy. And so if you're on your computer and not really paying attention, they might just go by and do one of these and put your computer down and get you back on track. But you need that person, because if we don't know which direction we're going, we don't believe in the right direction, then we're going to get off track. And then the next person is enablement. And this was one I had to wrestle with. It's one of mine. You know, we think of enablers and we think, oh, yeah, those people aren't helpful. That is wrong. We need enablers in the workplace, because you know what they do? They flex at anybody else's schedule. They are there to help out when you need them. You can think of probably a lot of these people at work that they'll be working hard and you'll stop by and they'll give you the time of day at any time. And it fills them up. People did that to me and it made me really happy. Then the last person, which is probably a gift I appreciate as much as any, is tenacity. This person lands the airplane. You hand it to them. They step over dead bodies to go and complete the task that's in front of them. Like everybody get out of the way. They're going to get it done. As where I'm more of a journey guy, I like doing it. Once it's completed, then it's done. Makes me kind of sad. But, you know, if we never land the airplane, we don't get to where we're going. So you need that tenacity person. So those are the 6 types of working geniuses.
Very good. And I want to point out, we all have 2 geniuses, 2 competencies, and 2 frustrations. And like Kyle said, our geniuses are those things that fill us up and give us energy. Our competencies are just kind of meh. And our frustrations are the things that suck the ever-loving life out of us. So out of those 6, there's 2 that give us life, 2 that drain us, and 2 that kind of don't do anything. So Jay or Denise, you have anything to add on the overview of the 6?
I thought that was great.
Okay, very good. So our topic of the day was how to use working genius specifically related to interviewing. So Kyle, this was your brainchild for this specific event. So I'm going to let you go ahead and start with what your thoughts were revolving around using working genius in interviewing.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was a big aha moment for me. So I was part of a mass layoff, and I bet others that are on this have been part of one or probably recently, because this is a trend in the corporate world. It's like, hey, we got numbers to hit, and so let's just release some bodies, right? And that is what it is in the corporate world, and I was part of that, and others have been too. So I had the opportunity to go start interviewing again, which actually I love interviewing. I like going in. If you've done Strength Finders, I'm a woo. I like winning others over, what makes people tick. So I enjoy interviewing. The problem right now with interviewing is that a lot of it's behavior based. A lot of people are just trying to paint a broad brush over, hey, we need you to do everything. And Working Genius says that every job's a 6-letter job. But I can tell you most jobs really only require you to do 2 or 3 the majority of the time. And so if we could figure out, I hope there's some HR people on here. I'm hoping that there's some people that do interviews on here listening, because this is really important to narrow this search down and to exactly what it is. Because when I have looked at job descriptions, it makes me think, okay, well, it depends. You guys say that I have to go in and do this administrative work a lot of the time, but it also says I get to rally the team. Well, one of those things I love and one of those things I don't. So which is it? And how much of it do I have to do? And that's where Working Genius comes in and helps us, to where I had an opportunity during my interview. I actually brought this in and I said, you know what, I can tell you really what fills me up right now, and we can figure out if I'm the right fit. Like I can do this on the phone interview right away, right? And so I go in and I read the job description and say, hey, I love to be able to arrange the right people in the right room, be a little bit pushy and help them to go and get moving in the right direction. And then I also like to help them continue on with the project. But if you need me to sit back and think about, hey, you know what? Why do we do these things the way we do? That's one of my frustrations, like sitting back and doing that. It's why I need Jay in my life. We meet once a week. I bring him in. I'm like, hey, I'm not very good at this, Jay, but you know what? You're awesome at this. Let's bring in and work together. And that's where this kind of goes together. But the reason interviewing is passionate to me about this topic is that it lets us not waste anybody's time. Like I've been part of tens of interviews for one position before. And as a people leader, I don't have time to do that many interviews. And you can usually tell right away if they're the right fit or not. But the problem is the interviewee doesn't know if they're the right fit unless they go through those interviews, because the job description is vague, wide, and deep, right? And so this tool really helps for me as the interviewee to drive the conversation. And as the interviewer, it also allows for us to ask the right questions and go in and see if they are the type of person that we really want. So I think this tool is invaluable. And I have talked a lot about it, and I want to hear where else, because I guarantee everybody else on this call has probably interviewed at least once or interviewed others. But I'll kick it around, and that's kind of where my passion has come to this topic.
Okay, very good. I think you covered a lot of different points there that we can get to within the time that we have. So I know, Jay, you have some more HR experience, probably more than the rest of us in the group do. So do you want to kind of speak to that HR side of things and how Working Genius can tie in with that?
Absolutely. So oftentimes when you think about kind of the world of HR and the overlap with really a lot of Patrick Lencioni's work, and we'll talk about the ideal team player when it comes to interviewing as well. We want to think about it from two sides. So either you are the interviewer or the interviewee. If you're the interviewee, then you want to use this tool ahead of the process to find something that is going to give you joy and fulfillment and energy in your work. You can so once you understand your geniuses and you understand what the role is, then you look at the tasks and you kind of have a good understanding of what that is. So it's good from that end to bring that in, and kind of like Kyle was saying too. So knowing your geniuses ahead of time, you can bring that joy and energy to the interview, which will translate. So whether you talk about explicitly the 6 working geniuses or just having the joy and energy of knowing exactly what type of work that you are looking for, it's going to give you a huge leg up, not only in finding the right job, but in getting the job once you have found it as well. And on the interviewing side, so just kind of from the HR side, logistically, if you are interviewing with it, you want to make sure it's included in the job description. So when you post a job description for a new job, and you want to make sure that you find somebody with the right geniuses for that job, then make sure that those are part of the job description. That way, legally, you are covered to say you can include or exclude people who do not fit that. And then what I would recommend is starting with what we always did was start with an ideal team player questionnaire. Because with the ideal team player, and I think Denise is going to get into that, but it helps identify who is the right person to get on the bus, right? You only want ideal team players on the bus, and Working Genius is great for understanding where on the bus people should be. So they have to fit your culture. They have to be humble, hungry, and smart. There's a certain kind of battery of things they need to be, in my opinion, before they even get to kind of the skills assessment. They have to fit the culture first before they can fit the skills. And because Working Genius is a productivity tool, I think that's where it fits in. Make sure it's part of the job description, and then you can include it. Then you can give the assessment and talk about it, and make sure you get the right person. Again, so much of this is I get excited about this because it improves lives. When you find somebody who is the right fit for the right job, not only does your company improve and the energy and the morale and the productivity of the people around the right person improve, but it improves their lives as well, right? So it's a win-win for everybody. So really taking the time to do that will just yield giant returns. I don't want to make up a number.
Right.
Well, attrition, right?
Huge.
Yeah,
Very
it
good.
helps with
Well,
attrition, helps with retention. I mean,
Yes.
that's a big thing with that.
Very, very true. So Michael has a really good question here. So who ideally should be writing the job description? The direct manager usually doesn't have the experience or training in writing them, and the HR person doesn't understand the language for the role. So Jay, what would be your answer to that? And then we'll jump to Denise.
Yeah. So I mean, it'll start with education, right? So you can't have either person put it in the job description if they don't understand it. So really understanding the model, get with the facilitator. Anybody that's here can help you kind of guide how to go through that education process and getting people set up with assessments and going through some training and maybe a workshop. So once they have that understanding, then it's pretty easy. Then you can actually just kind of borrow the language from the model. So if you're looking for somebody, who is going to be an auditor, for instance, then you probably want somebody with a high tenacity, right? You want somebody who enjoys kind of going through the weeds and going through that process. So when you look at what the description of tenacity is, make sure that language is included in the job description. Again, if HR isn't fully understanding with the whole widget and 6 working geniuses, then I think the first step is education.
Okay, very good. So Denise, I know you are well-versed in Working Genius and Ideal Team Player, which Jay brought up. So do you want to comment on how those two tie together?
Sure. So when I started using the Ideal Team Player when I was doing interviewing, I then added in all this stuff that we've learned from Working Genius, and the way those two marry up together is pretty amazing. And so to some of the stuff that Jay was talking about, I think one of the comments that I love that Patrick Lencioni uses is to scare them with sincerity. Like, be very sincere about, this is why this matters, and this is why culture is so important to us. And this is also why we want it to matter to you, because we do want it to be the right fit. I love that the Ideal Team Player, they're looking for people that are hungry and humble and people smart. And then when we marry that up with your Working Genius, then we have a better opportunity to make sure that that's the right fit. And I also think the other reason that Working Genius is so great and so helpful in the hiring process is because you can hire someone to do a job that a lot of people can do. But if we look at the different stages of our work, you definitely want to hire this person not only to do their job, but to also enter into the stage of work that's important, because you don't want another person right there on the ideation side if what you're needing them to do is actually close the gap and, like you said, Kyle, land the plane. So those are things that I think are super important, and they make such a huge difference.
Very good. And I think for me, even though I haven't really used Working Genius specifically for interviewing, just the fact that when both parties understand the Working Genius model and have that common language, it makes the conversation so much easier. Because when you say, this role really requires a lot of tenacity work, and you know what tenacity is and entails, you know exactly what that means. Same thing with, we need somebody that's heavier in this ideation phase, who loves to think and ponder and ask questions. And for me, if I read a job description that said think and ponder and ask questions, I would run away, because wonder is in one of my frustrations. And so I think just having that common language and understanding of the model is really helpful.
Yeah. And if I could tag on to something that Jay was talking about as far as the interview process, like who should write the job descriptions. So if your team is working on Working Genius, then as you need to write job descriptions, the HR person is going to understand a little bit more. They're going to understand why it's important to go to the actual manager of that person and talk to them about, as I'm writing this, what kind of language do I need to put in there? I think that's super great as well.
Yeah, and because I reread his question too, and I don't know if I fully answered it. The short answer is it needs to be collaboration.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yep, very good. Any other comments on that before we move on?
I could watch that.
You always have more to say. You always have more to say. So, okay, I love Dale's comment right here about tempting a promotion offered by your company. Who would want more money, but does it pull you out of your geniuses? I think this is probably one of the most valuable things that we can learn, just because, especially when you're thinking about being humble, hungry, and smart, it feels good to know that you're being looked at for a higher role, right? But if it really doesn't align with what brings you joy, money's not going to compensate for that. Like,
absolutely.
I don't think there's any remedy to being miserable. other than doing things that don't make you miserable.
Well, we can do it all, right? Like that's one thing that Working Genius comes back to is that we can do all 6 of these geniuses, but it
We
doesn't
can.
typically come naturally and it's not going to give us energy. So yes, that paycheck, it will be good for a bit, but it's not going to suffice for staying with the company. And I know the last company I was with, they said it took me about a year to ramp up and it took them about $100,000 to get me ramped up. So do you really want that attrition all the time, or do you want somebody that loves the job and will stay with the job for a while? It's in the long run, it's much better for the end user to hire the right person. We all know that, but the real question is, how do we do it? And it's this tool. It's this tool right here. If people started that language, working with Jay, and so he can write it with AI and do it really well, then we can really capitalize on hiring the right people in the right places.
Yep.
One of the things with this topic, I'll just say, so one of the things I really appreciate about Kyle, having talked to you and with your story about being laid off, is your passion for helping people find work, right? And I think that when we talk about the 6 working geniuses, we don't typically talk about it in that context, which is why I really like this conversation. Usually when we talk about existing teams, or finding gaps within existing teams and all the different ways to use it, right? There's so many different ways, but I haven't been a part of a lot of conversations that talk about it in the, to help find a job, right? To not only find a job, but to land the job, or on the other side, to find a candidate and then, land the candidate. So, that's just a comment that I love the passion there, and finding creative ways to use the tool can really empower people and empower businesses.
Yep. Very good. And I think Stan has a great question here. Is it common for a startup to begin with multiple passionate visionaries, but quickly find themselves hitting a wall because they only occupy a couple of the 6 positions? And I would say that's probably very true. I mean, I have my own thoughts on this, but if somebody else wants to chime in first, I'll let you go.
Well, I just raised my hand because going back to my first example, Jay and I are both starting out solo here. And so every Tuesday we work with each other. We borrow each other's genius in order for us to excel. And so, yes, as a solo entrepreneur, you have to borrow it. Sure, I can do all of it, but what Jay can do in 30 minutes takes me a half day and then I'm done for the day because it sucked the life out of me because it's not the stuff I enjoy. And so if you can use the right people, and it gives him life. Like I hand something off to him like, oh, I don't want to do this. And Jay's like, ooh, give me more. Give me more. Yeah, let me think about this. Come on, Kyle. Usually we'll end the day with him apologizing, being like, look, I know I'm talking a lot about this. It's because he's wondering and inventing for me. Like it just takes a little bit. It's all right. It's an amazing thing to watch in motion when you're filling somebody's cup, especially when it's something that doesn't fill yours.
That's so true. And I think to his question about like startups and visionaries, knowing what your geniuses are and your frustrations, I think is probably one of the most valuable things that you can know about yourself. And that's one of the things that Working Genius is so great about, is that building that self-awareness, because every job is a 6-letter job. Being an entrepreneur is that amplified, because you have to do all things for all the organization by yourself if you're solopreneur. And knowing who you can lean on or where you might need to pull somebody in is even more valuable, so that you don't hit that wall and you can continue to be passionate about what you're doing and work in those areas that do keep you fulfilled.
Yep.
And I think you're going to be informed sooner once you decide that you're ready to bring someone on. You're going to be informed even sooner on what this person needs to look like if you bring them on, because the last thing you want to do is bring on another visionary, right? Who thinks just like you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Another me is not helpful when I'm working by myself. We both just want to go, but we don't know what we're going on because we're at the end of the productivity model. And so, no, I don't need another me. Nope, I'm good.
Yep. Very good. And I love Tracy's comment. Like, you don't have to feel guilty about leaning on Jay for his geniuses, because literally wonder and invention gives him joy and energy. So it's really one of the best gifts that you can give somebody, is asking them to lean into their geniuses.
And as wonder and invention, one of my two frustrations are galvanizing and tenacity. So I it's a everyday, all the time battle to motivate myself to keep driving the things I have to do for the delayed gratification things I know I need to work on in my life. We're having a galvanizer to get to just say, hey, just go for it, and can give me that encouragement. It's huge. It's everything. Like it's, I don't want to over exaggerate it, but that could be enough to get you through a day.
Yeah, for sure. Another good comment here from MG. While I agree that there will be positions that aren't perfect for my geniuses, however, I also realize that a small team can't hire for every genius type. I have focused on my geniuses and navigating my projects using them, and still need to do the other tasks to get done. So Denise, I think you have some thoughts on this one.
Yeah, actually, I do. So, as a solopreneur, I started a business several years ago and knew that it was going to be a little while before I could ramp up and be able to hire. And so, I decided that my best next step was to bring on a consultant who could just work very minimal hours. And I needed them in the marketing space, but I also needed them as a marketer to be an ET. I knew that this marketer had to be tenacity focused. So I would just say to you that is definitely not something to fret over. It's just something to be informed about. Figure out where do you need the most help, get clear on that, and then just find people that can either come in as a consultant or just work as a fractional employee for you in those spaces. And yeah, don't let that scare you. That's why we are solopreneurs, right? Is we're wanting to make a difference. But while we can't wear all the hats, we want to figure out how do we find someone that's got the hat we need, even if we only need a little bit of them at a time. So that's a great question.
And just because I know MG in the context of his question, I think not in the context of being a solopreneur, but being just a member of a small team that doesn't have the capacity to hire outside. I think understanding that we're going to have to do work that's outside of our geniuses, and that's okay. Like for me, wonder and galvanizing are my frustrations, but I know if I have work that falls into one of those two, like I can do it. I just have to psych myself up for it. If I can change my environment and go do it and remind myself this is temporary work, but I can do the best that I can right now, it helps that process go better because I know that it's temporary. And so that's one of the things that I would encourage any small team that finds themselves working in those competencies and frustrations more often. Try and do as much work in your geniuses as you can because you need that energy to get through the other stuff. But we're just realizing that you're going to have to do work that doesn't bring you joy. Just try and remind yourself you don't have to live in that space. And that seems to help me.
And with the small teams, this is where it gets really important to know the language of the 6 working geniuses, because if you know that everybody's lacking discernment, you can go in and be like, all right, everybody, we all want to skip this part, but we can't. We need everybody to focus on discernment. And the thing that we all will want to do, especially me, galvanizing's right next to it. I'm going to want to pull in here just enough that I'm going to be like, all right, let's go do it. That's good enough. That's close enough. And you'll have to work as a small team together, be like, I don't know that we have looked at all of this yet. And you can poke fun at it. This is a vulnerability tool. So you can be like, you're not that good at it. I know I'm not that good at it. It's okay, but we're going to figure it out. But we're all smart human beings and we can do this. And right after this, we're going to go and work within our genius. So for smaller teams, super important that they show up and you kind of categorize your topics. So you know that where people need to sit in the conversation so they don't pull it naturally from something else, because wonder and discernment can feel similar to me. Sometimes those are probably two of the ones that I kind of can't quite tell, because both of them are a lot of question asking and then thinking of greater possibilities.
Very true. And I think that speaks even more to the importance of using working genius and being able to have those conversations in the interviewing process, because you can understand, oh, this is what we need, because, we have, maybe ideation phase is covered, implementation phase is covered. We need that activation phase, and understanding what that means when you're seeking somebody and when you're the seeker looking for a position. I think just that clarity of roles and functions is really helpful.
And
I'll add
Kyle,
to
you
that.
made a comment about the importance of categorizing your topics or categorizing your areas of work. I could see that being something that a Jay would love to do, is just like to get in there and delve in with the company and find out, okay, for all the kinds of work that you do, who are your best geniuses for each one. That was gold right there.
Well, Jay and I talked about this, just real quick side topic. Like, he would love one day offsite retreats and building out agendas. And he was talking about how excited that would get him. And I was thinking, that sounds miserable. Like, I'm planning things out, trying to get ahead of everything. And he's like, then I would just hand it off to you, Kyle. And I'd be like, yes. Just tell me what I got to go talk about and how I can get the team in the right place. Like, we would be the perfect pairing for something like that. I don't know if I'd ever finish the day because I don't have a strong tea, but we at least would have a lot of fun while we go through the day, right? And that's where this kind of stuff fits together.
Yeah.
And that's a great example of it too. Like, one of the things, it was, I've been building out this company, and I've been working on trying to figure out what it'll be. And it wasn't until a few weeks ago where it had been in my mind a bit, but I know we're not probably going to have a lot of time to go into the correlation between meetings and the 6 working geniuses. But strategic meetings live in WI, and offsite meetings are strategic meetings. They're WI. So not only do I have the skill sets for it, but so the realization of that, but then also the realization of that's where my geniuses are. Like, I need to go all in on that. That's it. Was a huge thing for me a few weeks ago. And that's, so I'm not necessarily looking for a job in the same way traditionally people are, right? But every single client I'm going to have to interview with, I'm going to have to, every single person. So I need to know my strengths in there and my geniuses with that, even for, founding a business and starting my own thing. I will say too, just to add a comment on the last question too. Even if you're not in a place to hire where your geniuses are lacking, the self-awareness of having a team and knowing where your strengths and weaknesses are means that you can work around that much better. If you're unaware and you don't know, then you're just going to be beating your head against the wall. The moment you realize every single one of your founding team are visionaries and innovators and not necessarily, there's a lot of gaps. Well, now you know that. And even without hiring the person right away, you can start to work around and hedge around those weaknesses. Really lean into your geniuses, right? Because then that's where, as founders, you might be able to find and create the most value for your clients. Just so really lean into those and minimize the weaknesses as far as that goes. And then when you're in a position to, now you know who to bring in to fill the gaps.
Yep. Very true. Another question from Stan. Is this related to you, Denise? Is this your Stan? Okay, very good. I saw the last name. I thought that can't be a coincidence. So can working genius be introduced to a solopreneur small team too early and cause discouragement because of gaps, or is it better to introduce ASAP and form a strategic roadmap for moving forward?
Great question.
Interesting question. Yeah. Anybody want to jump on that one? Denise, do you want to jump on that one?
Well, of course, my working genius answer is going to be, you can never start too early, right? Like, the earlier, and actually it's to what you were saying just a minute ago, Jay, like, the sooner you know who you are and where you land on this, the better clarity you have around what to do next. Because like anytime we're going to start anything, the most important thing to start with is, where am I right now? Like, just get that figured out, that you are here, and then you kind of know where to go.
Yeah, and discouraging is the wrong word there, and I'm not critiquing anybody, but in terms of starting too early and being discouraged because you don't have the right geniuses in there, if we're getting discouraged by this, then you didn't have the right facilitator to remind you that this is a no guilt, no judgment tool. Like, this is going to get you in the right place, and you can be in a place of like, yeah, this is okay. Yep, we hired too many of the same minded people here, but we still have work to do, and I like this team, so we just have to do it differently, right? And we know moving forward, as things happen, we can change. So yes, it could be discouraging, but it shouldn't be crippling. It shouldn't be something to where we're frustrated with it. I mean, if you don't have the tool right away, there's nothing you can do about it. Most people hire people that they they like and get along with, which is, we all know is wrong. Inclusion, diversity is a huge thing. That's what this tool is. It forced me to reach out to other people I wouldn't normally reach out, because probably because they were better at something that I wasn't good at or was frustrating to me. So I didn't reach out to them as often. Instead, I'd reach out to another galvanizer and we talk all day and be excited. And then we get done and be like, what are we going to do now? We just talked in circles, and it didn't get anything done versus somebody honing it in. So no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'd be of the same opinion. Like, if you can start right, then you have a better opportunity to be successful going forward. So I don't really think you can start too early on that. I do want to go back to one of the questions about how our role can impact our genius. Because so this question that came through, results in this role are different than results when he was in a different role, as his priorities have changed. Do you find that true? Do our roles impact our results? And they say that your results for Working Genius don't really change, because it's who you are. Like Kyle said, there are God-given geniuses. However, I have found in people that I have worked with, the role that you are in can have an impact on your genius, or the specific like muck that you're going through in the moment can impact what your results are. I actually had a session with a gal as a part of a big group a couple weeks ago, and her results were drastically different from when she had taken the assessment when she was brand new in her role back in August. Galvanizing went from a frustration to a genius. And so I sat down with her and I was like, okay, that's a pretty big shift to go from a frustration to a genius. Tell me more. And it turned out she came from a role where she was constantly being crushed as a galvanizer. Like, she wasn't getting the reaction. Nobody was moving. She was beating her head against the wall, trying to do something that she really loved and enjoyed. And that was reflected when she took the assessment, when she was fresh out of that role. Now that she's in a place where she can galvanize and she's in a more healthy and positive environment, it showed up as a genius, which absolutely feels more true for her. So I would need more context and information to be able to answer his specific question, but I'm curious if any of the rest of you have had experiences, or either directly or anecdotally, regarding differences in your genius results and contributing it to your specific role at the time.
I wonder about
unicorn.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jay.
No, I was just saying I wonder about it a lot.
Yeah.
Of course you do.
That's right. And you'll have an answer for us soon, I'm sure. So I actually served in a role for a season where we were a very small team. And this was just before I knew about Working Genius. The role that I was in pushed me to do a lot of work in tenacity. And I became really good at it, and thought that becoming good at it meant that I loved it. And I can see why your coworker would have said that, because when you're in it for a long time and you start to get praised for that kind of work as well, you think, well, this might be where I belong. So when I was then introduced to Working Genius, it took me a minute when I got my results back to go, wait, what? Tenacity is not a genius of mine. So yeah. And what a gift for you to be able to like help her walk through that, and actually just like unpack what was going on so that she can see where she is.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. It was very insightful.
Wow.
So, and that's one of the things
I'll just be vulnerable real quick here. So I was part of a church setup, and I was the one on the stage. I was the one trying to rally the troops. I was trying to enable everybody to go. I got fired from that. And you know what? I wish I would have had this tool, because I know what happened was I was stepping on their toes. And it also made me question the thing that I love the most, because I know that she didn't like it. It wasn't, I was pushing, it was her thing. And I was trying to support her in every way. And I wound up being probably too pushy with my galvanizing. But to your point, with you're talking about having what feels like an inaccurate test. I mean, has anybody ever doubted themselves on this call? at any point. Like at some point, people can knock you down enough to where you doubt something that gives you joy and energy, and maybe you don't feel like you're good at it. So it depends on the role. I think that's about the only time that this test could kind of change is when you've just not gotten the right craves provided to you.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts specifically related to interviewing?
I know for me that going in, I could pretty much script as a leader, when I was interviewing others, I didn't want to have to control the interview. I wanted to hear about them. What this tool does for you is it allows you to control the interview because you have a lot of stuff to talk to then. You can talk to your gifts. You can pull examples that are specific to what fills you up. And you can say, if you need somebody that likes this, if you need this type of person, here's the examples of why I've done it because I naturally gravitate to it. I'm going to kind of skip the rest of them because I don't really want to do it. But if I'm interviewing and I know what my working geniuses are, it allows me an opportunity to speak to my gifts, speak to the examples, and you control the interview. Wouldn't that be nice instead of just sitting back and having them asking, 10 years ago, what was your 10-year plan and why haven't you hit it yet? What's your 5-year plan now? Like all of those generic questions that we have to go through and be like, I don't know. I thought of it at one point, but things change, right? Got laid off. Like you never know what's going to happen with life. It changes things in an instant. So I like the tool because I can go in, I can control the interview, and it makes both of us to do a quick decision in the interviewing process because we don't want to waste time.
It's true.
I'll add one tip too, just for this. This applies to interviewing in general, but can certainly apply to this. If you're interviewing somebody and they haven't taken the test, don't ask hypothetical questions like, what do you think would give you energy? Right? This or that. Say something more like, tell me a time, in an instance that happened that you felt really excited and energetic at work. Like what was the circumstance that led to that? Ask questions geared towards that, and then let them tell you. Past behavior is a much better predictor of future behavior than somebody telling you what they think you want to hear. So just rephrase the question. Tell me about a time when, however you want to do that, but you can apply it to this as well.
Yeah, that's one of the ways that I describe your genius at the beginning. I said, if you've ever had a day when at the end of the day, you're physically exhausted, but on the inside, you're like, oh, I can't wait to do that again. You were probably working in your geniuses. Yeah. And I love what you said, Jay, like your past experiences and digging into when you really felt that joy and energy, that's going to be way more indicative. So I love it. Whenever anybody has questions or I'm not so sure about this, digging into their past can really help reveal those true geniuses.
Exhausted versus depleted, right?
Yes.
And so if you're exhausted from working hard and loving it, that's okay. But if you're depleted because it sucked out of you, that's how you know if you're working in your gifts or not.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I love it. Any last comments? We are bumping up against the end of our time. Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, all of you who were in the comments today. I love that we had a really robust comment section. And of course, want to again shout out Chris for producing for us because it makes it a whole lot easier to focus on the conversation when he's behind the scenes driving the bus. So if you're interested in live streaming, get a hold of Chris at Hit Productions. I think we're going to do this again, probably because we like doing this and I can talk about Working Genius all day long. So stay tuned. If we're going to keep with the first Monday of the month, then we'll look forward to that in June and post that when we get here. So thank you guys again for being here. Thank you all for watching. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And I forgot to mention at the end of the outro, there will be contact information to where you can get a hold of all of us. So you should do that. All right. Take care, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Julie.